It was 2004, and two very significant events had taken place. First, Kanye West had just released his debut album, The College Dropout. Second, I was graduating from the 8th grade and heading into high school. I was so influenced by Kanye at the time that I even wore a pink polo shirt to my graduation. It's a little cringe when I look back on it now, but I thought I was killing the game then. After the graduation ceremony, my dad pulled me to the side and he said he had to share something with me. Now, in my young 8th grade mind, I'm thinking, okay, he got me a surprise. Maybe it's some new sneakers, or maybe it's the new NBA Live that features Vince Carter on the cover. Now, what he had for me, it was a surprise, but it wasn't the surprise I was expecting. He pulled me to the side and he said this. He said, here's what's going to happen over the next few years while you matriculate through high school. Some of your friends are going to drop out. Some of the girls are going to get pregnant. Some of your friends are going to prison. And some of your friends are going to die. And I remember thinking, like, man, you just killed my celebration. Like, that was super extreme. But what he was attempting to do was prepare me for what would inevitably happen. And looking back, I don't fault him for this. Like, I understand. Because here's the reality. He, too, was never exposed to safe spaces, and he never learned the language of emotional fluency. And I'm a firm believer that you cannot teach what you do not know. So, quick question. How many of you are familiar with this image right here? Few. So, what this is actually a screenshot from a viral video that was a few years ago. The boy in the blue shirt was then 6-year-old Noah. The boy in the white shirt is his younger brother, 4-year-old Corey. So let me explain what's happening right here. Corey is on the verge of an emotional explosion, literally. Reason being, his Nintendo Switch had just ran out of batteries. Major crisis, right? Noah realized what Corey was going through, and he stepped into that space as his older brother to create a space for Corey to feel his emotions. See, what Noah understood was that if he could create a space where Corey would feel those emotions, he could then walk him through an exercise to help him change his state. And he did just that. So within a matter of minutes, Corey was back smiling and having a good time. And what could have been a moment for an emotional explosion actually turned into a practical lesson on safe space creation as well as emotional fluency. And guess where Noah learned this from? His mother, Ashley West, who regularly practiced mindfulness and meditation practices with her boys. So before we move forward, I don't want to assume that you already know this, so let's briefly define what a safe space is as well as emotional fluency. A safe space is a place or an environment where a person or collective of people can feel confident that they won't be exposed to emotional or physical harm. Emotional fluency is being able to sense, translate, and express those emotions in a healthy and productive manner. It was now 2008. I managed to make it through those last 4 years of high school after experiencing everything that my dad shared with me prior. My focus was basketball as well as clubs, and they served as scapegoats from any emotional traumas or pitfalls that I would fall into. Shortly after that, with graduation, again, after experiencing everything that my dad said, I still became a first-generation high school graduate. I was prom king. I was an all-star athlete. And I also earned a full-ride athletic scholarship to play basketball in Memphis, Tennessee. If only accomplishments could heal open wounds. The summer after my graduation, I actually stayed with my pop-up for the summer because he planned to drive me from New Jersey all the way down to Memphis, Tennessee, in his infamous Astro van. As an athlete and a incoming freshman, I wanted to make sure that I made the starting lineup. So I would train intensely. I'm talking 2-a-days, sometimes even 3-a-days, because I really wanted to break that starting lineup. And one day after I was training, I came home again to my pop-up's house, and I noticed that he was sitting on the couch holding his stomach in what looked like agonizing pain. So I walked in, I asked my brother, I said, how long has he been sitting like this? He said, a few hours. I'm like, man, that's strange. Because I'm used to my pop-up always doing something. Like when the casino actually made him retire, he would always be home fixing something, cutting the grass, making something. Sometimes he would even break stuff so he can fix it again. He was that kind of handy guy. I viewed him as a Superman-like figure. So to see him in this position, in this type of pain, I panicked. First thing I did was shot him to the emergency room. I started to call family, let them know where we were. And as my family started to come into the emergency room, the doctor came in from the back and he said, "Is this the Evans family?" "Yeah, this is us." He said, "I have some challenging news to share with you. Robert has intestinal gangrene." Now, I'm 18 years old. I have no idea what that means. So in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, you're going to give him some antibiotics. Okay, he'll be home on what day? I wasn't thinking the worst. He continued to talk and he said, the gangrene is progressive and there's nothing we can do to stop it or slow it down. You may want to say your goodbyes. And in a moment, I watched Superman literally disappear in the kryptonite bed right before my eyes with my brother and my father. And this would be my emotional breaking point because we all have one, especially our black boys. And for me, shortly after his passing, I would go into a deep depression and I would start suffering from severe anxiety. Now, I actually still went down to school in Memphis, Tennessee, but I dropped out after the first semester. I would end up going to 4 other colleges after that, while battling with suicidal ideations and the unwarranted pressures that black men face in America that causes us to become martyrs to our masculinity. Now, while my pop-up's passing was ultimately that tipping point, that breaking point for me, it wasn't what pushed me up the proverbial ladder of emotional destruction. I was a ticking time bomb, like most of our black boys are today. And if it wasn't his passing that pushed me over the edge, it would have been the next traumatic event. Literally, it would have been the next traumatic event. It's interesting because when you shake a soda can, you can't really tell if it has been shaken until you open the top and it explodes everywhere. In the same way, you can never really tell if the black boy has been shaken, emotionally abused, or traumatized until some type of event happens and then his top is open and he too explodes everywhere. See, without the language of emotional fluency and safe spaces to cultivate that in, black boys and men are merely just big toddlers. See, toddlers lack the comprehension to express how they feel and what they need. They literally just cry or scream. Some of them might even say mama or dada repeatedly. And it's up to us as the parents to understand that need and address that need. But here's the thing. For black boys and men, those cries are rarely ever tears. Instead, they come off as abrasive behaviors, acts of violence, drug abuse, and in worst cases, suicide. In the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry, an article titled "Boys Don't Cry, Addressing the Unmet Needs of African American Boys," it states that African American communities are lacking safe spaces for black boys to express their emotions. And they're also lacking mentor groups as well. Just imagine, right? You're a young black boy, you're being exposed to violence, you're being exposed to racism as well as white supremacy, and then you're also seeing black males be murdered on a loop that plays on every social media platform that you log on to. See, safe spaces and the language of emotional fluency is a necessity for us to survive. So Nate, how did you become emotionally fluent? Well, I'm glad you asked, because I know you want to know, right? While in the posture of running from my own emotional trauma, I found myself in my bedroom in the dark, contemplating and wondering if this would be the day that I would end it all. These were my thoughts, right? I was 3 colleges down. I just had lost a close friend to suicide and another one in prison. I was flat broke. and me and my family were on the verge of being evicted from our home. Now, looking back, I realized that I didn't necessarily want to die. I just wanted to kill the pain. And my best friend, he noticed that something was off with me. He noticed it. He sensed it, right? That's what best friends are for. And saying I'm good wasn't good enough for him to leave me alone. So in the act of love and compassion, he said, look, you need to get out of the house. I'm going to take you to the gym with me. He took me to the gym, and when we got to the gym, he introduced me to 2 other black men, and they invited me into their brotherhood. So we started training and working out 5 to 6 days a week. But before we would work out, we would sit in that locker room for about 30 to 45 minutes and just talk and fellowship. And what I was exposed to in that locker room, it changed my life forever. I was exposed to men, not even just men. I was exposed to black men being vulnerable and transparent, sharing what they were going through and how they were getting through it. And I don't know if they intentionally did this at all, but those men, they created a safe space for me to feel seen and heard without the fear of judgment. Tony Robbins actually has a quote on that, and he says that the quickest way to learn a new language is to immerse yourself in the environment where that language is primary. So now, as an entrepreneur, as a mentor, part of my work is going into schools and different underserved communities and teaching students and staff members the importance of safe space creation as well as emotional fluency. Because what I believe is this, for black boys, if we can get them early and help them to change their internal world, their external world will be shaped by them instead of their external world shaping them. In 2020, I published a book titled, I Love You, Letters of Love from Black Men to Black Boys, with love being the blueprint to create a safe space for someone. So this way you can actually teach them the language of emotional fluency and allow them to feel and embrace their emotions, right? And now when I say love, I'm not talking about the watered down version of love that y'all know from your soap operas and sitcoms and things like that, with the conditions attached to it. It's none of that. I'm talking about an unconditional love, agape, if you will, right? That consists of 4 action steps. We're going to break these down real quick. 4 action steps. Listen, open heart, validate, encourage. Listen with the intention to understand and not respond. Open your heart up to embrace and feel the emotions of our boys. Validate that their feelings are in fact real and respect them as valid. And encourage them with how you show up every single day with energy and how you interact with them. You have the power and the ability to discourage them or encourage them. Now, I noticed for me, by applying these 4 steps over a sustained period of time, I realized that I was able to create a safe space for black boys in a matter of minutes. A matter of minutes. And again, you have the power to do that as well. In the book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, Dr. Joy DeGruy, she paints the picture of trauma being passed down from generation to generation. Now, if that is true, if trauma can be passed down from generation to generation, then imagine this. That means that healing and love can also be passed down from generation to generation. But it starts now with us. Everyone here, everyone viewing, it starts with us. To provide our boys with the tools that they need not to just survive. Like we're past survival, but we're talking about thriving now. So I want to ask you a quick question before I go. A really quick question. And I want you to sit with this question. I want you to ask yourself, have I turned off my empathy button? Is the language of emotional fluency something that's only for me, my family, and my culture? Now, if you answer yes to any of these questions non-verbally, I will not ask you to raise your hand or say anything. But what I will ask you to do is turn your empathy button back on and lend a helping hand in this emotional war zone that black boys are unarmed to fight in. To every black man and black boy under the sound of my voice that will see this for years to come, if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, unloved, misunderstood, disrespected, left out, just know I see you, I hear you, I love you, and I'm fighting for you. Thank you.